we are joined now by Carlos Rojas Rodriguez, longtime immigrant justice organizer and former staffer for the Bernie Sanders 2020 campaign. Carlos, thanks so much for coming on the program.
Thanks for having me.
So recently, the Democrats and the Biden administration backed an extremely right-wing border deal that included Ukraine and Israel aid. It was an effort to get aid to Ukraine. That's what the Democrats, I guess, specifically in the Senate, like those on the Senate Armed Services Committee and those who are more connected to, there are many Democratic senators, I would say, that think that the fight, Russia's invasion of Ukraine, is existential and sending money to Ukraine is really important. And I support sending money to Ukraine with conditions. But the Israel stuff to fund the genocide, that was also a part of it. And so, of course, there's a lot of controversy on that end. And then the Republicans in the House are not in favor of Ukraine money because they're now pro-Putin-ish. And so to get it over the hump, the Biden administration and Democrats decided we're going to go so far to the right on immigration and give the Republicans everything they want. Now, thankfully, the Republicans in the House just decided, well, we're killing this because of Ukraine aid, and the Democrats were saved here, in my opinion, from Republican extremism. But that's a brief recap of how we got to this point. I mean, what was your reaction when you saw all of that hawkish border language in the bill? And if you could explain to our audience what it looks like and what it really means.
Yeah, so we started hearing these rumors, I would say, back in October, November. And we just couldn't believe what was being presented to us. The traditional compromise on immigration, I would say, since like the late Bush years, all of the Obama years, and right before Trump got in office, was a agreement between border security for citizenship for millions of undocumented immigrants in the United States. And I, had reservations about that deal because I don't think that we need to militarize the border. And there's a clear incentive for immigrants to arrive to this country. But, at least us who work in the immigrant rights spaces, we had something to fight for. And to go from there, to this new agreement, which is basically a wish list of Trump on immigration, including hiring more ICE and CBP agents, militarizing the border, encouraging governors like Abbott, continuing to create their own CBP and ICE agencies at the state level for funding for pointless wars, occupations, and genocide, right? And this really sent a message to us in the immigrant rights space that we're really bargaining chips in the eyes of the Democratic Party, right? I feel like we expect this kind of treatment from the Republicans who have embraced a extreme anti-immigrant narrative. But to see the Biden administration concede into that narrative and spearhead these negotiations and sending a clear message to the Democrats in Congress that this is a request from the White House has definitely set us years, if not decades back when it comes to the immigration struggle and the fight for immigrant rights.
So you mentioned it there, if you could touch on what the shift in mindset for the Democrats has been since the Obama administration. As you say, the DREAM Act did not succeed in Congress under Obama, but there still was this messaging and this desire to protect Dreamers, and he did do some individual executive actions to protect Dreamers. This was just 10, 12 years ago at this point, but there is no effort from the Biden administration to approach this topic from that angle. How have things devolved to this point?
Well, I would even say that they've devolved to the point that we can't even recognize the president's actions and rhetoric and policies, right? So during the campaign trail in 2020, back then candidate Biden was repeatedly questioned by activists and also at debate stages by other candidates about the 3 million deportations that took place under the Obama administration, right? 3 million people that have been deported that the Obama administration promised to legalize and never happened, right? And even with those actions, at least back then, we had helpful narratives, helpful rhetoric, the embracement of the DACA program, a commitment for a pathway to citizenship. And even though there wasn't a clear path in Congress to do it, we could at least rely on a president that would say, that would have a helpful rhetoric to advance the cause for immigrant rights. Now, during the campaign trail in 2020, Biden actually apologized and said that the efforts to deport 3 million people were misguided. He made promises to end private detention, right? This is the existence of private corporations that function like hotels. They create contracts with ICE, and they basically make money by detaining undocumented immigrants, thus creating an incentive for anti-immigrant legislation at the state and local level to keep those beds full. So Biden promised to end private detention. He also promised to end cooperation between police and ICE, and ending programs like the 287G agreements, which forces local police departments to act as ICE agents at the local level, which creates distrust between, the immigrant community and law enforcement. Now, we expected, right, that come 2020, 2021, we would see a president take executive action to end 287G programs, which he can do by executive authority. We expected an announcement that would prohibit private detention centers from existing. And we have seen the complete opposite. We have seen efforts to expand Trump-era policies that he criticized, like Title 42. We have seen horrific images, right, of Haitian Black immigrants being whooped on horseback at the border. We have seen Vice President Kamala Harris, during her visit to Central America, tell people not to come to the United States without offering any solutions for these countries that have been victims, of U.S. foreign economic policies and also military policies for the last 50 years. So to arrive today, 2024, right, and hearing that President Biden is making a visit to the border today, hearing rumors that there might be announcements of policies through executive action that just cave to this anti-immigrant rhetoric that right-wing extremists in the Republican Party have created is really disheartening. It is a disappointment, and we see it as a betrayal to the promises that he made during the campaign trail.
You were, and I did not realize this, Carlos, because I remember this video quite clearly. You were one of the folks in the audience that asked Biden a question about his immigration policy, and that was the response when he said you should just vote for Trump. I remember that quite clearly in my mind because at the time, the primary was still competitive, and it was just such a shocking answer to give to somebody who was just speaking about the condition of immigrants in this country. I mean, what was that like, asking him that question? And does it surprise you that he's decided to go down this road?
Yeah, we were at a town hall in South Carolina, and we have brought parents who have had family members either detained or deported, right? And when Biden was running for president, there was a clear question in our heads. So under the Obama administration, while he sat as vice president, the second most powerful person in the country, right? He saw the Obama administration deport 3 million people. Now, we had parents engaged with Biden at a town hall, really asking whether we can trust him to be the president, knowing that when he was vice president, 3 million deportations took place. Now, he went on just sharing some basic talking points about Dreamers and DACA. But we had older people in the room. We had undocumented parents who don't qualify for DACA, who have been waiting for a pathway to citizenship for years, if not decades. And the only question that we had for him was whether he would promise to stop the mass deportation crisis. Now, I think he got very defensive. And I think that this is a rhetoric that we have seen from Democrats when it comes to many progressive issues, right? That if you don't like the status quo and what we have to offer, then you can go ahead and support the worst of the two evils, right? So you can go ahead and support Trump. And I think that that's what he was trying to say. Well, if you don't like what I have to offer, then you can go ahead and vote for Trump, knowing that his policies would probably be worse than what we have. Now, fast forward to 2023, if I just move to the United States and I just experience immigration policy for what it is, I really can't tell you the difference between the Biden administration and the Trump administration, because Biden has actively expanded anti-immigrant policies from the Trump era that he promised to eradicate. We are seeing an immigration crisis that is really affecting the nation, and we're seeing Republicans use the anti-immigrant rhetoric to really energize their base, but we don't see a counterweight on the Democratic side. We just see a concession and further pushing to the right on immigration during an election year, and it is 2024. I'm really concerned about Biden's chances for re-election. Not saying that he should be the president that we have, but when we think about Trump and Biden, clearly, when Trump was in office, the immigrant community was terrified. It was even hard to organize and mobilize people because we really thought that we were going to be rounded up by ICE. And the message that I have for Democrats, right, is that when Obama, under the pressure of undocumented youth, issued the DACA program on the summer of 2012, the summer before his presidential re-election, it made sense for immigrant rights organizations and the movement to transition from a campaign on policy and trying to really pass things to electoral cycle, right? Because we felt that we had at least some protections for undocumented youth. Now, this year, there is no motivation, there is no incentive. I am in community meetings with directly impacted people that have campaigned for Democrats for years, and they're really asking, what are we really fighting for? It just feels like we're fighting against something, but there's nothing to fight for. And like the latest negotiations that we have seen, mixing border security with foreign aid for genocide, occupation, and pointless wars, really make it clear that we don't have a path forward on immigration. And just like many other constituencies, my fear is that, young people, immigrants, who have family members who are citizens, who have kids that have been born here, don't really have a motivation to go to the polls in November.
I know that you don't have too much time, so I wanted to ask you this before we have to say goodbye to you. What is the alternative vision for the Democrats? What could they do to differentiate their messaging? We've seen when they try to be Republican light, they just embolden Republican messaging. I mean, what's really needed is a standardized, modernized process to bring people through so they can go through the system in a humane way and have their asylum claims heard. Militarism only creates more death and insecurity for migrants that will cross anyway, but they'll be beholden to cartels, they'll be in danger for their lives. I mean, what does militarism look like, and what should the alternative path be for the Democrats? Border militarism, I mean to say.
I would say that first, the path that they should stop taking is embracing this anti-immigrant rhetoric and policies, right? When you present Biden and Trump to the general population, I would say that mostly every voter would assume that Trump would be tougher on immigration. So Biden trying to court voters, right, or putting, this supplemental bills to militarize the border, I don't really think politically creates any base of voters that would say, you know what, if my issue is border security, then I think that Biden would be better than Trump on border security, right? Trump is the person who created this narrative. So you really can't make a political case for Biden to out-Trump Trump on his own policies, right? Now, I think that we are at a point in place, and just to mention Michigan, for example, a couple of days ago, where there is an all-time high discouragement of the Democratic base or the traditional Democratic base to actually be energized to go to the polls in November. We need to offer a countervision to what the Trump administration did during their years in office. And this, as you have highlighted, means that we really look to reduce the backlog that we have on immigration. We need judges being able to make determination on this case. We need policies that allow people to come forward, make a claim to be in this country and have the right, to a process where they're treated fairly. We also need compassion, and we just need to remember that we all come from somewhere, that these visa quotas that we have today were a racist effort to just really limit the people that were coming from. When folks were coming from Europe, we basically had an open border policy, right? Where you just get a medical screening and that's all you need to do. But when people started coming from the global south, then all of a sudden we saw a need to restrict in immigration, and also people, I migrated myself. I'm an undocumented, I used to be an undocumented immigrant for 12 years in this country. I remember my parents going through the decision-making process, and it took us years to really land on the decision that we wanted to leave our loved ones, our community, our language. My mom was a teacher and she loved her profession. She knew that she would have to trade a dream job for probably a factory job, which she worked for nearly 20 years, and she did it because she saw no path forward for us in Peru, So what I would say is that countries in the global south need support. They need financial help, and instead of expending billions of dollars on foreign wars, occupations and genocide, we can actually support countries get back on their feet, so that next time that Kamala Harris goes to Central America, she doesn't just tell people not to go home, but actually offers solutions in the form of infrastructure programs and financial help for people that are fleeing north. Immigrants are forced to make these decisions. If we had a better quality of life in our home countries, we wouldn't be here in the first place. And just to remind viewers, some of these policies that are forced, some of the conditions that are forcing people to migrate were, initiated by the CIA, by the School of the Americas, by occupation, by supporting military dictatorships, and really also, we don't talk about free trade a lot, all of these programs like NAFTA, CAFTA, that basically create open borders for US corporations to set shop anywhere in South America, Central America, and Mexico, have displaced business owners and farm workers because they have no way to compete with the infrastructure that these corporations have. So, a lot of times people tell me, do you support open borders? And I feel like that's a really unfair question when literally companies have open borders because we have created policies that allow them to go anywhere they want on earth. We have, in the name of globalization, put poor people and working class people in conditions where they're forced to migrate. So I would just remind people that everyone who is coming here with their children, crossing Rio Grande, right, making this journey, sometimes 2,000, 3,000 miles, I would really just ask them, receive them, welcome them with love and compassion, because they are forced to be here. They really don't want to be here, until I really became Americanized. I didn't really want to live in this country because I really felt the racism as well. So that's my message.
I really appreciate it. And yeah, that's such a great point about globalization. Globalization for capital, but not for human beings. Thank you so much, Carlos Rojas Rodriguez, immigrant rights organizer, former staffer for the Bernie Sanders 2020 campaign. Thanks so much for your time today. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me.